Hello, and welcome to The Conservative Christian Commentator. I'm your host, Mike Croft, and today I want to talk about something else that I found that kind of bugs me a little bit. So I saw this video of a young kid who was essentially spouting the standard anti-work talking points. And of course, people posted it online like, so much wisdom for one so small. And what the kid literally was saying was he said he doesn't think it's fair that we trade 50 years of work for 10 years of freedom. He also says he doesn't really think it's fair that the freedom isn't really worth it because then you're old and can't enjoy it. Now, this sounds okay on the surface until you realize there's a lot of very fundamental problems behind it. This is fairly standard anti-work rhetoric. And this kind of annoys me for a couple of reasons. Let me go through and refute his points, and then we're going to talk about why it annoys me. So first off, I'd like to point out that we're not working to earn freedom. We are working to survive. There's a very big difference there. The Bible says, "He who does not work shall not eat." And we're largely disconnected from that in our society, but the point still applies in general to most people, that if you are not willing to work, you're gonna run out of money, you're not gonna be able to buy groceries, you're not gonna be able to pay rent, things are gonna suck, and you're not gonna be able to eat, and you'll be on the streets. And this happens to a lot of people. So we're not working to earn freedom, we're working to survive. Work is a necessity to survive. Now, let's say, for the sake of argument, that everyone just does magically have the freedom that he wanted everybody to have. Like, everyone doesn't have to do anything if they don't want to. Society would literally collapse because it's maintained by people who do the sucky things in life. Society is maintained by people who are willing to put their personal feelings aside and go do something that they don't want to do because, number one, it pays them, and number two, it's essential. People who work in sewage plants, person who drives your garbage truck, person who keeps your electricity running, all of those people are doing really sucky jobs. Oil rigs, they're not doing them because they are forced to. They're doing them because they're essential to the economy, and they also need the money. And usually jobs like those pay pretty well because they recognize that people don't want to do those jobs because they really kind of are awful. It's really actually a trade-off in our modern society that we have today. Pretty much before we had the modern structures and policies and everything that we have nowadays that we are no longer grateful for, we had to each work in the field 18 hours a day during harvest time for like several months straight, and that was what your work was. You worked in the fields, and then farmers rotated crops in such a way that they were working essentially year-round because that's when you're making money year-round. So we traded off working for 18 hours in the field for working maybe 8 to 10 in the office and earning more money. This is a great trade-off. This is something that the kid does not appreciate and that anti-work people do not appreciate because they just see, well, work sucks, I don't like work, I don't want to do work. And yeah, I can relate to that on some level. Work does suck. I don't want to do work. Does that make a difference? No. Gotta do what you gotta do. To say what this kid was talking about is really to ignore the history and the accomplishments of the people who worked as hard as they did to get our society where it is today. This partially gets into why I'm annoyed at this, but basically, it takes for granted the vital work that people who are on oil rigs are doing that powers our society. If they disappear, if everyone working in the oil industry disappeared tomorrow, like the Green New Deal people want, the world would basically collapse because we depend on oil. We need it. We depend on the work that those people do. Another thing to point out is that something that a lot of the anti-work activists seem to miss. And that is a principle that I have found to apply to my life. Doing things that suck really helps to contrast with the things that don't suck. It's really hard to appreciate the privileges you have, the things that are nice, without having things that aren't nice. You don't have anything to contrast it to. You're just kind of living in this smaller realm of everything is good or great, and you don't have a wider realm which shows you things from bad to great. Because you're missing that, then all of a sudden the things that are good and not great become bad from your perspective, because your perspective is warped. It's kind of like the Overton window, but just for humans and how humans see things. That's something that you can only understand if you're a young person who hasn't had to work hard in their life. And every young person who has had to work hard understands that the point of work is not just to survive as well, but the point is to do things that suck. Because if you do things that suck, that will help you appreciate the things that don't suck. So now I want to get into why those points really annoy me. It's because these kinds of arguments coming from these kinds of people, especially people who are young and don't necessarily have a lot of experience, really annoys me because it expresses disdain for the people who have come before you, all of your ancestors who have worked extremely hard to get you to the point where you could have enough of a privilege where you could actually say something like that and not even have to worry too much about it. If we had said something like that in the past, the person would have been derided as lazy, and that would have possibly impacted their ability to earn things. But today, no, we can just say whatever the heck we want, and that's a privilege, and that's something that we should be grateful for. And this expresses a very fundamental lack of gratitude. It basically spits in the face of everyone who worked their butts off. Pardon my language. The people who worked that hard to get us to where we are today. And this is essentially committing what's called the peak fallacy. It's looking at everyone at the top of the pyramid and not looking at everyone at the bottom of the pyramid. It's exactly the same as what feminism does. It looks at the fact that, well, men occupy most of the C-suite jobs. You notice they always talk about the C-suite jobs. They never talk about the fact that men make up the vast majority of homeless people. No, we don't want to equalize that. We just want to equalize the C-suite jobs. It's peak fallacy. It's only looking at the best possible bits and saying, I want that. Why can't I get that for no work at all? That ingratitude really kind of rubs me the wrong way. And I think the reason why it rubs me the wrong way is because I used to be that. I used to be that ungrateful. I used to be that entitled, for lack of a better term. And God taught me a couple of hard lessons, and He's still teaching me a couple of hard lessons because I'm really stubborn. But God was teaching me these things because He saw the ungratefulness, and I'm honestly very grateful for those lessons. But He taught me a bunch of hard things about the value of work and the value of a good day's labor. Very few things are more rewarding than a good day's labor. When you get home and you're tired, but you know you did good work today. And that's a good feeling to have, because God designed us to be on this planet, to care for this planet. And surprisingly, caring for this planet takes work. Adam in the garden, before the fall even happened, was working. The thing that the fall did was make work really awful. But God works all things together for the good of those who love Him, so He put in place systems to make sure that when we do things that really kind of suck, that gives us appreciation and enjoyment of the things that don't suck. It's important to remember that you have to push through those hard times. That's God working those things to your good, because those things are still going to be bad. They're not going to be fun, but that helps you to get perspective. And perspective is the exact thing that talking points like this lack, and it really bugs me. So that's basically all that I have. I just wanted to point out that the fundamental ingratitude is really disturbing on videos like that young man, where people are praising them for essentially their ingratitude, and they're stomping on the legacy of those before them, especially for the stomping on the parents whose house they're still in, and they're still depending on for food, and they are essentially saying, well, it's not fair that you should have to labor for 50 years to get 10 years of freedom, and they're essentially saying that their parents are part of that same flawed system that they hate. And I could go on a long rabbit trail about that, but I'm not going to. I'm going to try to keep it short and sweet. But it expresses fundamental ungratitude for that. It expresses ungratefulness and just entitlement. And I have a problem with that, mostly because I used to be that. What I've learned now, in conclusion, is to practice daily gratitude. I have learned to be grateful in many things and grateful in the small things. I'm grateful for this car that I have that works. I'm grateful to have a roof over my head. I'm grateful to have clothes that I can put on my body. I'm grateful to have a computer. I'm grateful to have a phone with which I can record videos. I'm grateful to have a microphone that works sometimes and that can help me record said videos. And I'm grateful for anyone who's watching. So thank you very much for tuning in, and I hope to see you next time.